I'm Becky Meagher, and welcome to Transitions, Body, Mind, Spirit. This is part 2 of a very interesting program. We have 2 gentlemen who have left Middle Tennessee, gone to Peru, and experienced a wonderful, interesting mental journey, physical journey with a special plant that is medicinal and expands one's horizons. And this is the second program that really we're going to find out more information on what that journey really was once they got off the plane. So very, very interesting. So we have David Thomas and Brian Strahin. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
David, tell us in a nutshell what this trip was about. You just recently went to Peru, and the retreat center you went to, and what is this for anyone who hasn't seen the program?
Well, essentially, for various reasons, Brian and I decided to go down to Peru and drink ayahuasca.
Ayahuasca.
In a ceremonial setting. And ayahuasca has been used by shamans for thousands of years for various healing practices. It is now open to Westerners to go down there as a very deep spiritual experience. And it is actually a very, very strong hallucinogen that allows you to completely open your third eye and learn things about yourself, learn things about your past, see things about your future, and various different things like that. So.
All right, so tell us, you found out about this on a website, you signed up, and then you flew to Peru, you got off the plane, and then what happened?
Well, we had no idea what to expect, and as Dave mentioned in the last show, I think we both had this gut instinct that this was right, and even though we had wired $4,000 to a bank in Iquitos, Peru, we just knew it was all going to turn out.
You just
right.
trusted.
It was an unbelievable sense of trust. And so we actually ran into a gentleman who was a part of our group. There were 22 of us when we were leaving Lima to go to Iquitos. And I just knew once we met him on the plane, we were literally getting on the plane, I knew, okay, we're not the only ones who have bought into this. If it's a scam, at least Dave and I aren't the only ones. And there was a little sigh of relief, I think, for me at least, to know that he was going to be with us. And so when we arrived, we found our way to the hotel, which was recommended to us by the center. And then once we got to the hotel, we started to meet other people who were coming in and hearing them whisper about the Temple of the Way of Light. And then we just started talking, and before we knew it, we had a whole group of people who had paid a lot of money to be there. And so the next morning, we were told that we were supposed to wait for the temple's ride or the contact person to meet us. And at 10 o'clock, she was there. And it was a beautiful 30-something-year-old from South Carolina who is working at the temple and basically left her job and gave all of her life savings to the temple because she believed in it so much. And was there volunteering, I think. Actually, her role was as a volunteer. She wasn't even a paid staff member, but she was on staff as a volunteer there, just working, and she had a Temple of the Way of Life t-shirt, and I thought, okay, this is it. And so we all packed our bags on this large van, and they drove us. The city itself sits on the Amazon River, so the bus drove us to the river where 2 boats were waiting for us, and we got on one, luggage got on the other, and down the Amazon we went. And it was a good hour and 15-minute, hour and a half boat ride down the Amazon. And we finally arrived, and a group of Peruvians were waiting for us.
But we got off, we hiked into the place, and as soon as we got there, the 3 female shamans who are called maestras, and the 3 male shamans who are maestros were there waiting for us with these huge smiles on their faces, and the female shamans kissed us. And I think probably the only other time in my life that I'd ever experienced that kind of love from a complete stranger was when I spent a week at the Magnolia Grove Monastery in Mississippi.
Which is Thich Nhat?
Which is Thich Nhat Hanh's, one of his satellite monasteries in Mississippi.
Wow.
And the love that the nuns and the monks emitted down there was comparable, but it was just an amazing feeling of acceptance and love.
And these shamans greeted you. Did they speak English?
No.
No.
They don't speak English.
So
No.
You just literally feel the love.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's just
because you can't understand.
Right. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It's really profound.
And so, what was the format? You get there, you're greeted, you feel the love. Then what happens?
Well, you know, you get it the first day. You really just settle in.
And are you in the jungle?
We're in the middle of the jungle.
Okay, so you get off the boat.
Right.
You're in the middle of the jungle.
Get off the boat.
You staying in huts?
Yeah, basically everybody has their own hut unless
Wow.
you're down as a couple, in which case you share a hut. So yeah, I mean, you get down there and you just kind of settle in, you put all your stuff in your hut, and then you have dinner the first night. And just
Was this vegetarian or?
No, I mean, you could eat vegetarian if you wanted to. There is a very strict diet that you are supposed to follow for 2 weeks leading up to the retreat, during the retreat, and then 2 weeks after the retreat. And that includes no spices, no salt, no sugar, no red meat, no pork, no sex. It's actually really, really intense. I mean, that's one of the, major things that you experience on the trip is just this cleansing
Yes.
of your body. And especially for those of us who live in the West that are so used to just eating all this stuff, you really realize. So Brian and I always joked around when we were at the supermarket shopping for stuff, like we could hit the outside with the fruit and veggies and that was it. And everything in the middle had sugar or salt or something that we couldn't eat.
It's taboo.
Right. But chicken and fish were okay.
Okay.
Yeah. So the first day was just kind of settling in and
Right.
getting to meet everybody on the trip and hear their stories and why they were there, and it's really fascinating to hear all those stories. So.
And then, so is it the next day you take the ayahuasca?
Yeah. Yes. We knew ahead of time. They gave us the schedule.
Okay.
So I think we had some idea of what we were going to get into, but we knew that the next day was it. It was the first ceremony, and it works out that they have 2 ceremonies, a day off, and then what they call the Trinity, which, interestingly enough, is 3 more ceremonies. And I think the name was so appropriate for some reason. It just seems, with all of our relationships to the religion and all that, and then another day off, and then 2 more ceremonies. So 7 ceremonies.
Wow.
Which I think the number itself is very symbolic, 7, and just there's a lot of spirituality tied into the whole process. But that first night was looking forward to it, but also a lot of I think wonder, curiosity, fear for me, very afraid of what might come. We'd heard a lot of stories about what people had encountered, watched a lot of YouTube videos, read a lot of articles. I suspected that anything could possibly happen and it could become very dark and difficult fast. So you don't eat dinner that night, and really every day is the same routine. You get up in the morning and you experience another type of herbal plant remedy that they've created for each person. That each person, after meeting with the shamans, comes up with their own unique plan for each retreat. And so we would get up in the morning at 7. We would drink this substance, which was just a combination of water and different herbs. So it wasn't terrible tasting like ayahuasca is, which I'm sure we can get into. But so we drink that in the morning, we go to breakfast, and one of the beautiful parts about the experience was there was really no other agenda other than just building a community with each other. So after breakfast, we had until noon, so a good 3 hours to connect, go for a walk, pray, journal, exercise, all of the above. A lot of us would spend 3 hours in the cafeteria and just be there for lunch. We didn't even really move because we were just in such deep conversation. So I think there was a lot of question and wonder about the night, and then or lunch came, and then we had what was called the flower bath. So the shamans soak all of these flowers in big water basin baths, and so we would arrive before lunch, and they pour all of the water on top of each of us, and we're told not to shower, so to let it soak in, so the water, the energy, soak into our bodies. We go to lunch, and then after lunch, other than drinking another round of the remedies that we had in the morning, we were waiting until 7 o'clock. Was it 7? We arrived at the large temple at 7 o'clock. From 7 to 8, it was basically being in the group together, waiting for the shamans to arrive, and at 8 o'clock they come into the temple, and that's when we drink.
When you say temple, what is this, a hut, or is this a building? When I hear the word temple, what is this?
It's called where you drink. The actual ceremony is called a maloka, but it's kind of like a yurt.
Okay.
Anyone knows what a yurt is? Just a big circular building. Okay. And the way they set it up is they have 22 mattresses laid out in a circle. And obviously, everybody has their assigned place. Brian and I, just by happenstance, happened to end up next to each other. They didn't even realize that we knew each other, but they just put us next to each other. And then Andrea, who is our facilitator, is in the middle, as well as the shamans. So that's the setup. And you have your your bucket for vomit, which we can talk a little bit about.
I'm just so curious. Tell us, Lynn, the first time you took this and what happened. The first time, not the 7th, the first.
Well, they unless you've worked with the medicine before, you start out in the first ceremony with a smaller dose, and just to kind of get you acclimated to the medicine. And so she calls up, I think it was 7 people per each group to come up and drink. And then the shaman will pour out the medicine into basically what looks like a shot glass. And then as soon as everybody in the group has their drink, and she says, all right, time to drink ayahuasca. And, at that point, you just do it. And it tastes awful. It tastes, I can't even, there's not something that I could even compare it to, but it's really just a horrific taste. And I think that's kind of part of it, is she's testing you to see how badly you really want to take the journey.
Do you really want to do this? Because it tastes bad.
And it gets progressively worse each night as you go along. It's just like, I don't want to do this anymore. But and then you go back and you lay down on your mattress, and you're just kind of laying there or sitting or whatever, waiting. And especially the first night, it was really kind of like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen? And then 30 to 45 minutes later, at least for me, I started to feel the medicine take effect. And just some visual things started happening for me around the hut. And probably within about 45 minutes to an hour, she started, I'll say she, when I say she, I'm referring to ayahuasca. It's just the easiest way to personify it, right? It's a very feminine energy.
It's a feminine.
And she started talking to me. And so it's kind of like insights, I guess, or, it becomes easier to distinguish between, okay, what is my mind and what is information that's being downloaded to me from ayahuasca, or if you want to call it God, or whatever you feel comfortable with calling it. And the first night for me was very just a feeling of very profound love, a really profound connection with the divine. you know, I think for the first time in my life, I really felt like this overwhelming sense of just like, just this relaxation and relaxing into the knowledge that, you know, there really is divine love and this profound connection to it that I had never felt before in my entire life. You know, I'd always been told about it and experienced glimpses of it in meditation, but it's always been an intellectual thing for me.
Right.
But after the first night of drinking ayahuasca, it just went right here into my heart. And it was, you know, this profound sense of everything is okay, you know, and everything that's happened in your life happened for a reason. And it was,
so it was a good feeling.
It was good. It was
Okay.
very good.
Okay.
The first night for me.
Right.
So.
Brian, what was it like the first night?
Well, I think it may have been in the first show. There was a lot of resistance, and I think it was due to some deep-seated fear that I had related to darkness, death, the devil, evil, Satan, hell, and I think a lot of that has to do with my experience with the church. And so I was on guard, and I learned throughout the 2 weeks when we were there that the mind, and not just my mind, but I think anyone's mind, has the ability to really defend itself in the moment from the experience, although I think ultimately the ayahuasca was working no matter what happened with my mind. But consciously, I was sitting there the first night, lying there, and not much was going on. I remember briefly seeing colors and different designs. There are actually specific designs that certain, or that at least this plant, but I understood maybe other plants would have them as well when you are ingesting them, but you see certain designs, and I saw some of those. But after that, I didn't consciously experience much. And there was a lot of disappointment because here I was fighting it, yet secretly hoping that something was going to happen.
Maybe I'll see the vision.
Waiting for the visions, waiting for something, and it just didn't happen the first night. And I was very curious to get up the next morning because I was wondering, okay, was this just me? Because during the ceremony, you're not talking to anyone. You can see people rolling around or sitting up and sitting down and going to the restroom, and there's vomiting and sometimes crying, but I didn't know that first night, not much activity was going on. So I wondered what would happen, and it was only when I got up and walked outside when I saw people sitting around talking that Dave and others had these experiences, and that there were some also who had similar experiences to my own, that not much happened. And I think there was a lot of disappointment and frustration and feelings of neglect or rejection by the plant, that somehow we were inadequate. And I know I felt that I was inadequate, maybe I wasn't good enough for the plant. And these were emotions and experiences I've had in my life throughout.
So it mirrored what was out.
Yes, very
out
much
there.
so. Yes, it was almost a self-fulfilling prophecy. I'm not good enough, I'm rejected, and now see, it was confirmation. Now I'm not good enough and being rejected by ayahuasca.
But that was day one.
That was day one.
And it changed.
It very much so
There was
changed.
a transition.
There was a transition. Yeah.
Yeah. So tell us how that ended up transitioning, because there were 6 ceremonies, is that correct?
7.
7. I mean, so you had 1 down, 6 more to go. Did they increase the dosage as the time went on?
Yes, Dave and I were joking. Our facilitator and we understand that there was a facilitator because the shamans are completely disconnected to the Western culture. And so we were even told that the amount that we were drinking is unbelievable to the shamans, because they only take a very small dose, because they also drink when they're in ceremony with us. And they can't comprehend why or how we're able to ingest this much. And she described it as our brains are so layered with gunk, just trauma and whatnot, that we have to take more to go there. And so when I went to her, our facilitator, who is German, a German woman who's drank probably 300 plus times I went to her and I said, you know, this is what's happening, and she said, no need to worry, tomorrow we go deeper. Which meant not only are we going to go there, but to get us there, we're going to drink more.
Right.
So the second night we drank more, and that was the most hellacious night of the 7 nights, because it wasn't that I was in darkness or that I was seeing visions or hearing words. It was all activity in my mind. I describe it as a night when you've drank a lot of alcohol, you're extremely inebriated, and then you do some other type of drug, like smoke a lot of marijuana or do something else, and there's just this chemical reaction with a lot of different toxins and pollutants in your body. And unfortunately, that's how we see marijuana these days. But in situations like that, when Americans use it like that, it feels and the experience is that it's a pollutant, a toxin, because you've got all these things going on. And so if you were to do that and lay down in bed, imagine what your brain would feel like. The room spinning, your body, you're feeling nauseous, but you can't vomit. Just and that went on for about 5 hours.
So you're just laying there. In the meantime, are the facilitators, the shamans, are they doing anything for you? Are
Yes.
They can't
Yes.
speak. I mean, they can't speak English, right? Or
Well, that's the beauty of shamanism, and specifically with the Apibo tribe that we were working with, the shamans from the Apibo tribe. They sing what's called an ikaro. So every shaman comes and sits right in front of you and sings an ikaro.
is that a chant?
A chant of some kind, yeah. It's obviously not a specific language, so they weren't using words. It was more just sounds that were coming out of their mouths. But yeah, all 6 of them came around and were working with my energy and my spirit. I guess that's how I understood it throughout the evening. But once the ceremony ends at around midnight, the trip lasts for another 5 or 6 hours.
So do they go away?
They do go away. They leave, and then you choose to either sleep in the Maloka or go back to your own, what they call a tambo. And that first night I stayed, and the second night I went back to my cabin.
The second night for me was very, a lot of third eye, psychics type stuff, if you want to call it that.
Can you explain what that means, third eye psychic stuff?
Well, you know, I mean, the third eye or your crown chakra, for those that are familiar with that kind of terminology, is basically related to your intuition and your ability to see into the future and different insights and everything like that. And that's kind of what the chemical compound in ayahuasca is doing, is it's opening your third eye and allowing you to see the true nature of different things and into the future. And so for me, the second night was a lot about seeing different things that were going to happen to me, getting messages about different people that I needed to go see or go do certain things for.
Like premonitions
Right,
of the future.
yeah. And,
this is
you know,
gonna
I'm
be...
sure all of this comes across as sounding maybe a little hooey, but, you know, I mean, at the time it was very...
It's real.
Yeah.
To you, it was your reality.
And in fact, since coming back, I've had different discussions with certain people that I was given messages about, and they've been right on. You know, about, so for me, that was the second night. And then, but as it progressed, especially in the middle and the Trinity, it got really intense for me, and that was when the breaking down really started happening and got really dark. And then, but by the end, I was being put back together again, I guess, so to speak, and gaining different insights about things I needed to change in my life, messages about the way I had been living, and stuff like that.
And this whole process took how many days?
12.
12 days. So is there a closure ceremony at the end? Because you've all gone through all this. This is traumatic in many ways.
I think it was just the way that they planned it out. By the 7th ceremony, a lot of us had gone through a lot of deep, you know, wounded, healing, and so we all were ready to taper off. Some continued to drink more, but it just felt right. The seventh ceremony, it just, the number itself felt right, that it was time to, we knew this was the last one. The energy in the room had changed. You could just feel the energy changing. There was a beautiful spirit in the room. And then the last day you don't drink. So, you know, that night we had dinner with the shamans. There was a lot of excitement about, we had worked on this together, we had done this. There's a market where you buy a lot of the jewelry, which Dave and I are wearing, and so and then the next morning you leave. So yes, there was a sense of closure.
Yeah, looking back, here you are connected to, you know, all the radio, cell phones, all that garbage, compared to being in a more pure sense where you were. Where does that leave you now? Reentry. Where are you all today, now, in this Nashville TV studio, talking about where you were, which is a whole other world, physically and mentally? So where does that leave you all, Brian?
There are days when I feel stranded. I look around and it's very hard to connect with our culture and certain individuals I might encounter during the day, and then there's this just beautiful sense of peace that's come over me. And yes, it's hard to be around the technology and people running into each other because they're too busy texting, but the beautiful connection I feel with Mother Earth, which sounds hooey, hokey, pokey stuff, it's there, and that's what I really was going to experience and to feel. And so it's surrounding ourselves with our community and the friends that we have, which there's a beautiful community in Nashville that we're a part of, this mindfulness meditation community, and the people have been very supportive.
Like Brian, I feel some days I feel really, really disconnected. But like he alluded to, in the background of all that, there's this deeper knowing and this sense that doesn't always manifest itself in my mind. I still worry and stress and have anxiety about money and all these things, but behind all of that, there seems to be this knowing that it's just all a part of the journey, and that, you know, there really is a reason why all this stuff is happening, and if you can keep it within that context, then...
Well, I want to thank you both so much for sharing what amazing journey. And thank you for Transitions.